This week on RSBANDB Update, Pride Month arrives in RuneScape with representation for everyone. We share tales of pride in our favorite Ultra Plus graphical locales. Then we end with a preview of Daemonheim Archaeology and skilling offhands. Also, we discuss Cireon's Necromancy journey. This is RSBANDB Update, episode 989, recorded Thursday, June 6th, 2024. Ultra Plus Pride. Hello everybody and welcome to another episode of RSBANDB Update. Tanis is away this week. He's off celebrating something called a birthday, so happy birthday to him. But I'm not doing the show solo here this week. I do have somebody else with me. Cireon is here. Welcome.
I was like the reserve of the reserve, right?
No.
Yeah, I was.
No, you had a good reason to be here this week. Multiple.
Oh, okay, fair
multiple.
Enough. I was just going to say that I was the very last arrow in your quiver.
I get that reference,
little pride themed pun there. To start the show, that's what you get.
That's right, and of course, Cireon and I host the old school RuneScape update each and every week. So this is kind of different for us because we've been going with that since October, and you haven't really been on the RS3 show much since then. So it'll be good to catch up.
I haven't been on the RS3 game much since then.
But there's reasons. For you to be happy. We'll talk about that after. But I want to thank our experienced tier Patreon members who make RSBANDB Update go. And this week, that's Amos Reed, Andrew C., Drama Free, Jason S., Jesse W., Kesky, Ricky A., Rippeth, Runestar, and The Naked Captain. Big, huge thank you to all those wonderful people. And you'll hear more about our Patreon offerings a little bit later in the podcast. Right now, though, if you want to follow along, full show notes can be found at update.show. We have the Discord over at update.show/Discord, and the friends chat can be found at BitsBytes. And Cireon is a member of Clan Quest, and as I mentioned, old school RuneScape update fame. So how are you enjoying the increased polygon counts this week for what is RuneScape's Pride Month event?
It's so weird coming back to the game after having played almost exclusively old school, especially because, like in a sense, old school. When you come to old school, you feel it's so simplistic and old, but it also brings a certain level of clarity. And I was doing like some combat earlier and just like I couldn't see what was going on. Particles everywhere. I'm like, okay. I need to really get used to this again, because the amount of, visual spectacle that just gets thrown into your face, it's a little bit much.
Yeah, combat readability is always something that I think that's interesting to consider with RS3,
and also like just the UI complexity, right? Like there's just like I was just earlier using my bank and just absolutely failing at it because I kept hitting. I was switching back and forth between withdraw all and withdraw one, and I wanted to go back from all to one, and I kept hitting the one button. But I was hitting the one button for the presets, so I kept withdrawing all of my fetching stuff.
That's something,
and having to resort out my inventory.
That's something that still, I believe, RS3 does better. I still think we have the better bank in RS3 compared to old school.
I don't know. I was using the RS3 bank and I couldn't. There's just so much complexity, and the UI is a little bit inconsistent, and like there's sub-menus everywhere. I don't know. I like the presets and I like the functionality, but I do miss some of the simplicity. And I think that is very telling for RS3. I think it has gotten sort of lost in the amount of functionality it feels it needs to provide.
Yeah, and you're supposed to.
It has lost sort of its elegance and its underlying system.
Yeah, and that's why I think the UI rework was on the list of things that was in the survey, and we'll see where all that lands on it. But content-wise this week, how was the what I'm going to call the fetch quest of finding all of Rain's friends in Varrock and around the
Good.
area?
I did it without a guide. So
Okay.
some of them took me a second to find.
Yeah,
But
I did most of them without a guide.
oh Shane. Oh, come
I had
on.
trouble with the one who was atop the church in Varrock.
Yeah, I was looking on top of the castle first, and then I realized there's like, yeah.
I mean,
Two.
obviously the cat one was obvious. The volcano one was obvious. The one in Falador was obvious as well.
I struggled with the one in Falador because I was like, it was like dancing. It's like, oh, party. Oh, the person's not in the party room. Turns out that one was right next to the lodestone I had arrived at, and I had completely glossed over it.
And they're all, of course, annotated by the little overhead icon above their head. Each one of them representing a different one of the overhead pride flag emojis, which I think that's the story about this rather than the fetching aspect of it. Because if you go talk to any of the individual people out there, they'll say they're proud of one thing or another, and it doesn't necessarily, based on what I was reading into it, unless there's deeper meaning in what they say, lean into the flag that they're carrying. And as I said, that's probably the true story of this event, is just the voluminous nature of how many of those flags we actually have in game now as overhead emojis, banner emojis, and what have you.
Yeah, I like so 2 years ago. I thought it was last year, but apparently it's already 2 years ago.
Yeah,
We had
2 years.
Tales of Pride, and I think I like that event a little bit better because one of the things you get with Pride, I feel, especially if you look at it from a perspective where you're not too familiar with what's going on within Pride. It's like all of these made up rainbow colors, people with like big extravagant outfits, right? Like it's basically carnival if you look at it from the outside. And what I really liked about Tales from Pride is it
got to the core of it.
Well, yeah, but also it didn't pretend to be, right? Like it was very much telling very normal day-to-day stories.
Yeah.
Like even if you're gay, you're still gonna have a first date and all of the same awkwardness that comes with it, right? Like
yeah, that was the Armadillo one, I think.
Exactly. Yeah. No, the werewolves. I don't know. I don't remember the story. So that's what I really liked. And the current one, although I like how broad it is and how many different pride flags it included, I feel lacked that a little bit. Like, I think there was some representation in how the characters looked, but many of them looked very colorful and extravagant, and that's almost feeds into the stereotype a bit more rather than advocating for the normalcy.
Yeah, and you know, when you say it leans into the stereotype, I think that's one thing that everybody looking at this needs to be aware of, because if you talk to people who, there are these people in game who say, I want nothing to do with this, they'll say it's, and you ask them why, they'll say it's because of one of, the various stereotypes that come associated with these sorts of events. And I think when you get it down to the base stories that were in the event from a couple years back, you bypass all that, and you can make it, of course, fit better into the game world.
That's the thing with Pride, right? And that's one thing that put me off Pride, both before and after sort of my self-discovery. That put me off from Pride is that it's so many companies just coloring their logo rainbows and saying how much of an ally they are, and that's really all they do.
Like my favorite thing on that is if you look at a lot of the big brands in the world and their branding for this month, and then you compare that to the branding of their Middle East chapters, and you see the line down the middle. That is just what it is for them.
Exactly, right. It's and I think that puts me off a little bit because it's empty messaging. I think the Tales of Pride to me was one of these, like, okay, they clearly put a lot of effort in, and clearly they put in a lot of effort in this year's event as well, because
Mhm.
I think they got a really good coverage of all of the different identities, right?
Yeah.
It's not just, the ones we all know about. It goes pretty deep into the LGBTIAQ plus acronym.
Yeah.
And that's good, I think. And
Throw in a
that's
2 in that
important.
if you're Canadian, of course.
Yeah. And I think it gets away with it, right? Because for a lot of companies, the rainbow flags go back in storage for another year at the end of June, and at the end of June. But if you look at sort of the permanent options that RuneScape has, right? Like, for example, the ability to just pick which gender of titles you want
Yeah.
for any character. Like, it's no longer tied to your appearance. Or the inclusion of the Dux title for like Fort Forentry. A lot of people will roll their eyes at that, and I have to admit that sometimes I have the temptation to also roll my eyes. Like, I mean, come on, it's Duke, right? Like, everybody knows it's Duke. But like, imagine that you are struggling with your own gender identity. How empowering it is that a game tells you, you know what, you don't have to choose. You can pick this third option. Like, for a game that's really about roleplay and putting yourself in like a different character, and especially with all of the cosmetics,
Yeah.
RuneScape has become a important game for like self-expression. Like, it has all of the tools. It's just a palette, and they are not shying away from introducing this part of it as well. So
Yeah. I mean 15 overhead emote options with this year's Rain Pride event, in addition to all the other stuff.
And some of them pretty obscure as well, which I think most people wouldn't know about as well.
Yeah, and I think that comes from feedback too, because I remember, we look back to 2022 and last year's. I feel like there was a conversation in the community. Let's have the banner show more than just the standard, right?
Yeah.
And then let people choose beyond that. And we talked about Tales of Pride in passing, but that is still available for you to go play and to go grab the Rainbow Gators.
Yeah, go do it if you haven't.
If you want to do that, yeah. And what? Go ahead.
Yeah, and for me, like the inclusion. So, I identify as aromantic, which is queer, strictly speaking. It's an interesting one, because like it's one of those things where even within sort of the LGBT IAQ plus community, it's one of these things like it's not really queer, right? Like, it's not as queer as being gay, and for me, what that really made happen, right, is like, it's a very personal thing trying to discover like what's up with yourself, right? You encounter all kinds of things, and things don't add up, and then when you learn about things existing, like in my case, our romantic orientation, it's quite validating to know that you're not the only one with there. But if then you go around and you see all of these Pride events and it's never mentioned anywhere, right?
Yeah.
You really start doubting yourself, right? Like, is my thing really a thing, or am I just, trying to compensate for whatever? And that's why for me it was so it's really funny. It's something I just discovered this year, but it sort of almost bums me out when there's a Pride event and I don't get that option to express myself. And the fact that it has been included in the possible color choices in RS3 and the Pride event, honestly, this is gonna sound super like cliche, but it makes me feel seen. If that makes sense, right? Like, it's a game saying, you know what, you're like, because I doubt they're gonna add like a set of colors just for me.
No,
right? So they're basically saying,
but there's more than one. But there's more than one of you.
Exactly. This is a thing. It's a valid thing, right? It exists, and that's okay. And to me, that's a really empowering feeling. So.
Yeah. because you got the overhead emote, you have the banner, you have the title that you unlock from this, which has
Oh my
a
God,
similar
I
number
love
of
the
variants
title.
associated with it.
Oh my God, the title is not only it's the right colors, it's gorgeous.
Let me
I
have a
love
look
the
at.
fade.
I have not had a look at that one.
I am running with it. I'm usually not a massive expressor. Like, I stick with colors because it's a little bit less, in your face. But the title is gorgeous. It's perfect.
Yeah, it is a little bit hard to read at the end of it, but you can definitely get the idea of what they're going for with it. So,
Yeah.
and I also do need to say, for the folks out there who are not aware of this, you can pretty much type any of these identities into the Maxscape customizer, the Compscape customizer, and there will be already in-game presets for that. For people who are unaware.
I don't know when they did this. It might have been part of the Tales of Pride year as well.
No, it was when they redid the coloring options on the cape when 120 Max came out a while back.
Yeah, because I remember that Aromantic wasn't there, and that was another moment where that really bumped me out. And then at some point there was an update where they added a whole bunch more. Because I had tried making my own one, but I struggled making it look nice. Theirs looks nicer, I'll be honest. So it was really good for them to add that as well.
Yeah,
and that's just something that's around, right? All year round.
And see, that's the thing, is that I think it really does go both ways. Is that if you have no interest in this event, there's no quest point, no tangible XP reward associated with it. You don't need to interact with it if you don't want to, if it's not your thing.
Yeah.
Right. But at the same
look, and yeah,
I was just going to say then at the same time, there are certain communities out there that are much more militant about this sort of thing, and they'll say if you're not accepting of our event, you have zero place in this community. Whereas with RS, if you don't want to do it, you don't have to.
Yeah, look, I mean, I don't want to say I get it, but like I used to be in like a similar camp where I was like, I don't know, Pride can't be that big of a deal. Like but like I sort of get it now. Like I think part of the reason is that so much of it is superficial, because if you look at so many companies and what they do in terms of branding, it is superficial. But I
think that's really a good way of summarizing it, because we talk about the corporate nature of that all the time, and you do get that kind of nonsense like that too in some places.
But then you do get a company like Jagex who generally seems to care and be thoughtful about the Pride event they release. And I'm like, you know what? That's the kind of event I'm okay with.
And I forgot the shark.
Yeah,
the progress shark. I forgot about that.
Yeah, I love the shark. And
I had to Google this because I wasn't exactly sure what this was about when I saw it. But apparently some company in Australia used it as a mascot one Pride year, and it just took off.
Yeah. And look, now I lost my train of thought. How rude.
We were talking about companies.
Yeah, every now and then, a company like Jagex comes along and they just pay that, give that attention. And I think it is important. I mean, it's fine for people to ignore, and I wish that Pride months were necessary at all. But as long as we need them, I'm glad to have them. I'm glad that there's companies that do pay the extra, that go the extra mile.
Yeah. And I feel like also this discussion is good too, because it kind of opens a door for people who might, be wondering what's going on and maybe might be interested.
That's why I wanted to share my own story.
Yeah,
exactly. That's why I wanted to share my own story, as how important it is for me and how nice it is, especially for like an orientation that people tend to dismiss. It's been. Because I haven't figured myself and things out, right? Oh no, I'm gonna make this show deep. No, don't worry, I'm not going there. But like I
can't help you with that.
I have not figured everything out. So anytime where the world is like, we've got your back. We understand that this is a thing. It means that there's one less thing to worry about.
Yeah,
and I can focus on what's really important.
And it also, I think, really just underscores that, if you were to walk into a bunch of people in game who are being, truly hateful towards you, no matter who you are, Jagex has your back, both in game and out of the game, as the company.
Yeah.
And the reason I say that is because for completing the Rain Pride event, you do get the Pride shirt. But what folks might also not be aware of is that you can purchase this Pride shirt, or rather pre-order it, on the RuneScape website, and the proceeds outside of the usual, fulfillment and printing of the shirts that would have been profit otherwise are being donated to charities in the UK, in particular, AKT, which is a national charity that specializes in working with LGBTQIA plus youth who are homeless, at risk of homelessness, or living in hostile environments. And they say donations will be based on all revenue received from the sales of the t-shirts minus shipping fees, credit cards fees, cost of the garment, printing, and 5% to cover admin and fulfillment costs.
Yeah.
And you have until July 3rd to do that.
I love the transparency of that as well.
Yeah, good to know exactly what charity it's going for. And apparently most of the sizes at this point, I saw that they had already sold out.
Wow.
In terms of what was available. So
that's such a nice thing to hear.
And I mean it's also, I think, a nice image that's printed on the shirt, because it's the golden, or not the golden party hat, the rainbow party hat.
Yeah, exactly.
Which, of course, you're going to get questions about what that's for, and you say, well, that's from RuneScape, and it's my Pride t-shirt. So I think this is a wonderful option for anybody who wants to make a monetary donation.
It feels like you could get away with, it's not obviously Pride, right?
Yeah,
could get away with
that too.
And that's I think it's important as well. Like, unfortunately, that is still necessary in some contexts.
Yeah, that's fair enough. Fair enough on that. So, links to the Pride discussion from this week's event and the shirt pre-order, all that will be in the show notes over at update.show. And of course, if you haven't done Tales of Pride, definitely head on over and talk about that. Or rather, talk about that? No, go play that little mini quest and go get a little bit of insight into some of RuneScape's characters out there by talking to the curator in Burthorpe. All right. So, in addition to that, this week
we're going with the heavy stuff. No,
I feel like that was a good discussion. I thought it was a good discussion about where it lands, and listeners, if this resonated with you, let us know in the comments. It's always fun to discuss these sorts of things if you have similar, or you want to share anything on that nature. But we also have Ultra Plus graphics mode this week, and the question I think that people have come up to with this is, where am I going to see the benefit of this if my computer can run this? And I look at this and I see, this is RuneScape 3, and part of the thing why I love this game. I mean, old school, as we've talked about, has its charm, of course, but you gotta admit, these graphics are really wonderful that we have in the game. And were you able to go around at all and have a look at any Ultra Plus areas?
No.
Okay.
No, I haven't even enabled. I don't know. No, I haven't enabled it. I should probably do that.
Yeah, I mean, your computer should be able to handle it.
I have a good GPU. This will not impact my.
No, what GPU do you have, out of curiosity?
I think it's a 4070.
Oh God, yeah, that's definitely going to be able to handle it. My 2070 was able to handle it. But I know that, we had a discussion in the Discord on this about whether or not you were actually able to see the differences in this. And to me, the thing that I see with Ultra Plus compared to just regular Ultra is that things just look a little bit more natural. and not game-like, I'll say. But one place you can really...
That's a high bar for a game that looks very cartoony.
Well, you see it, and this is where I was going to go next, is that, you know, I think my favorite shot is the Relica shot that I've been going through here. But the other places where this really shows itself off and resonates is anywhere with shadows and lighting. Because if you have ultra draw distance on right now, there will be a point in the game where the shadows just end. So what you can do now is, even if you're just running ultra draw distance, you can enable ultra plus shadows, and then the shadows will show beyond where they would show if you were running high shadows normally, because that's one of the things that's been really noticeable on that front for a while. Is I feel it comes down to the shadows and things like the God rays and such, but beyond that, it's a little bit difficult to tell on this. I'm gonna pull up 2 example screenshots of where that lands in terms of the shadows in particular on here.
I just turned on Ultra Plus.
Yeah.
And my PC sounds like it's taking off. All the fans are running at full speed.
I should check.
Oh boy!
I should check my system then, because my game does that. Even on regular Ultra.
Let's go back to Ultra.
Yeah. So I've got these images here were provided by Zant, and the main shadows was the thing that he definitely noticed. But the one given that's showing right now on the video is a picture of the Grand Exchange and Edgeville. And if you switch over to Ultra Plus and you look into the background of the image, you'll see that, well, you know, even at the back of the image now, there are shadows where previously there were no shadows. So it just continues adding a little bit of depth, even as the draw distances start winding down. So the way, if you really want to see this, is you go ultra draw distance with shadow quality Ultra Plus, and then you can start to get a bit of a picture of some of the things that can happen with this. But you know, I'm just really happy to have this when it comes to it for screenshots at the end of the day, and I feel like the areas that we've had graphically reworked recently really show some of these things off really well. In particular, Relica just looks so warm and natural on that for what we have. But
Relica warm? Relica's not supposed to look warm, Shane.
Well, have you seen the pictures of it with since the graphical rework? It's actually got a warm palette to it.
But it's cold. It's like Vikings and like north and cold and pine trees.
But inside the town, it feels actually warm.
Okay.
But I know where I'm going to need this Ultra Plus graphics mode next week.
Oh. Mm-hmm.
It's with the new Daemonheim dig site, which we'll get to in just a minute. But I'm going to thank some Patreon supporters right now before we get too far down the track. So this week I'd like to thank Alaska, Alvaro L, Amos Reed, Anatoly D, Andrew C, Arvid L, Chilbura, Daniel W, Dominic R, Drama Free, Duramax, G Hammy, Guy Lafleur, Jacob G, Jade Gizmo, Jason S, Jesse W, Jim M, Kesky, Lemon Lodge, Luminos, Mongrath, Pernasius, Ricky A, Rippeth, Runestar, Samuel FL, Scott DS, Shirtpants, Targayen, Tew Lee, The Naked Captain, The Dabbing Goat, Tim, Tom V, Truth Ray, Ukulele Steve, Zant, and Zazakon. Big, huge thank you to all of our Patreon supporters for allowing us to do what we do here. We're in the middle right now of building your next monthly bit or bonus show that'll come out next week. And this one's going to be about the narrative issues of the Sixth Age.
I think it can be a very short show.
Uh-huh.
One word. Yes.
I know. We've got people already building all that together. So we're going to discuss all that and see where it landed. But the way these work is these are our special monthly shows. Patreon members choose them each and every month, and we have a back catalog of 70 plus of them now. You can just head on over to patreon.com/RSBNB and gain access to this entire back catalog for as little as $1 a month. And with that, you also get a mention in our show notes each and every week. You can come to the round table, and you get the ability to vote on monthly bit topics. For $3 a month, you can become a VIP member where you'll get a special Discord rank, chat channel, and access to high-quality stereo versions of the show. And for $5 a month, if you want to give a bigger gift, we have the Insider tier where you get exclusive access to outtakes that we use to make the clip show at the end of the year, in addition to the RSBNB Update Christmas card. But if any of this sounds...
Lots of sneezes in that. I think it should be called the Shane sneeze tier.
I don't think we've had any of those sneezes this year, interestingly enough. I've been good on allergies so far. Knock on wood.
Oh, knock on wood. I was about to say, it's that time of the year, let's be honest.
It really is. I was having problems with my eyes yesterday, but they seem to be okay today. You just had to say that, didn't you?
Yeah, of course I did. You know me. That's what I'm here for.
In any case, patreon.com/RSBNB, Christmas card, and so much more available at that tier. But if you just like the podcast or you want to support us, that's where you do it. Patreon.com/RSBNB. Thanks so much, everyone. All right. So I know I teased Daemonheim Archaeology, but in addition to the Ultra Plus stuff, there's one other thing that I want to mention this week. And have you seen any gigantic familiars?
On screenshots, yes.
Yes.
Not in game.
Yeah, so this will probably be patched come Monday, but if anybody wants to experience this throughout the weekend, all you do is you grab one of the Scorpion familiar pouches, summon that, and then use your favorite cosmetic override, and you will have a larger-than-life, literally, version of that pet following you around. And I'm just going to say that Brains, when he's, 1.5 times taller than you, looks kind of funny. As does Omen the Owl and so many others like that. And these are those kind of bugs that they happen and you just kind of laugh at them. Like, they're not giving anybody an advantage, but they're just hilarious to see and fun to play around with.
Yeah, I think my guess is that, when you have a model, you need to normalize the size of that model, right? So like when you create it in like Blender or Maya, whatever you have, it will have like a certain size with a certain dimension. But in the game, you need to scale that factor. And I guess when they changed the Scorpion familiar, because it's a different style than basically all of the other familiars. So ever since they made all of those summoning familiars, they probably have started working with a very different scale of, their typical models. So they changed the number, and the number gets persisted if you override it. Yeah. That's a fun one.
Yeah.
I can see that slipping through the cracks.
Yeah.
I think it's hilarious.
I'm trying to, think of for this weekend what pet I want to be running around with. That's going to be absolutely huge.
I mean, the Shadow Drake, obviously, and have people just swear at you.
I don't want to be that obnoxious.
Okay.
Yeah. For pets that are large, horizontally, like the Herblord pen, that will actually clip through your model, through your player model, because it's so big. But I think I'm just happy with running around with the gigantic brains. Gigantic brain? Gigantic brains? Get it?
Yeah, sure.
If anybody wants to do this...
Flatter yourself.
Yeah. Yeah. If anybody wants to do this, you can, rather than buying the Scorpion pouches on the exchange, it's a Crimson Charm and Bronze Claws, which Bronze Claws can be found very cheaply at the Rogue's Den.
There you go.
So, I just had to mention that because it's not too often we get a bug that we can all laugh about that doesn't hurt anyone.
Mostly harmless.
Yes. We're not going there, though. We're not going to Mosla harmless, are we? you just hear the pin drop with that, don't you?
Mm-hmm.
So let's look at this dig site that's coming next week. I feel like this is what everybody's been waiting for out of all the content that's in game, or rather, that was on the roadmap at least until we get to some of the more meaty stuff here. And this also encompasses a graphical rework for Daemonheim, courtesy of Mod Blackwitch, Mod Alex, and team. Which, oh my god! Again, like I said, another place where you're gonna want to use this Ultra Plus and grab some nice screenshots here for it. It just really leans into, I think, what a modern vision of Daemonheim would be if that was being released today. I think that's probably the best way of putting it.
Will it make you hate dungeoneering less?
I'm kindly choosing to forget that, because I don't need to actually do any dungeoneering to experience this and enjoy it.
That's unfortunate.
Yeah. Which, I mean, at this point, I feel like dungeoneering is heading into hunter territory, where it probably needs a sufficient amount of love and care to, I
think so.
Be made to feel good.
It could get some quality of life, but I think it is pretty solid.
Okay.
It's a good skill. The grouping system is what needs an overhaul.
Yeah, we've never had good grouping for it, but
that's the problem. I don't know if you've ever played it like in a full group of 5 people for at least some time.
Yes.
That
Yes.
And it's actually quite a lot of fun that way, I think.
Yeah, and I feel like you when you mention it that way, you lean into it and you do, everybody has a sufficiently high level on that and whatnot, and everybody can work together on that, and you get a team going. You could maybe even call it, RuneScape's team forming skill or something like that, right? If everybody knows each other well enough. But we're here to talk about archaeology, not dungeoneering. Jeez. Daemonheim looks nicer with this. This dig site will start at level 73, and the level bands are split into 2 areas at 73 to 87 and 103 to 113. The first one is at the Daemonheim surface, which will have excavation sites around the fort, and then 103 to 113 is being called the Warped Depths, and it's interesting to know that they're not calling this floor 61, even though, that was asked about very early on in the project. So we're getting 3 new mysteries, 3 new collections, and each story, they say, takes you closer to understanding exactly who built Daemonheim, what their motivations were, and what threats could be waiting for you. Which, when you look at dungeoneering in Daemonheim, those are the unanswered questions that have been dangling now for 14 years, since 2010.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
Do you have any crackpot theories of what we'll find?
I think it might be Dragonkin related. Just a hunch.
Yeah, that's a good guess. That's a good guess at this.
Yeah, no, I think it's good. Like, I like that. It's a little bit of a mini site, but I think it complements Orphan very well. I like seeing a different perspective on it.
Yeah. And is that the thing? You said it complements Orphan very well, and they're calling it the archaeology dig site for Daemonheim. But when we've had things like Centistan added in the past, they've called them mini sites. So I'm interested if there's any official thought on what's mini versus dig site.
I don't know. Like, Centistan was pretty big. Like, if you look at it, like in terms of skill,
it's bigger than 3 mysteries, 3 collections, and 16 artifacts.
Yeah, exactly. So I think you can compare it. I think they're pretty comparable. That's what I would guess.
Okay. Yeah. But
look, I'm excited. I think this is a piece of lore that has,
it's been untold for far too long.
More love, and I think they did do the floor 61 thing with the 6th age quests, and well, yeah, you're gonna make a whole monthly bit about why that was not a good idea. I'm pretty sure. And I think like that soured sort of like because I think it was very underwhelming. Right? It was so hyped up and like
because it was really dishonor among
is
thieves.
just chilling there.
Yeah,
exactly. So
and
I think this will rectify that. Yeah,
because
I
after
think it's
that,
cool.
Moya and whatnot took over Zamorak's hideout after Zamorak went bye-bye.
Yeah,
And we saw that in succession. So,
yeah,
interesting threads to pull on with that. But people will know that we're conveniently dancing around the subject of what else you can get from this site.
Mm-hmm.
2 skilling offhands.
Oh boy.
For archaeology and hunter.
Yeah, people were like, "Why not dungeoneering?" But you don't take items into dungeoneering.
Don't make me go into actual dungeons.
Yeah. No, it's yeah. I mean, archaeology offhand, yes, please, I'll take it. I'm 120 archaeology, but I'll take it.
Yeah. While excavating through the warp depths, players will be able to find parts of this damaged brush, which is Balarak's sash brush, and with the assistance of a collector with a keen eye for Dragonkin artifacts, you can repair Balarak's sash brush to assist with future excavations, and this will provide passive boosts to excavation success rate and Madoc base precision, and it will help you find additional materials. Additionally, those chasing the time sprite will get a unique bonus if they can keep up with that. They're not telling us what that unique bonus is just yet.
No. I think it's exciting. I think it's cool. It sounds like a cool little update.
Yeah, and you know what the funny bit is? On a monthly bit or so ago, I think it was 2 months ago now at this point, we talked about, or no, it was last month, we talked about abandoned content and why skilling offhands, as they were first announced at RuneFest all those years ago, didn't come to fruition. And oh, lo and behold, here's 2 more. So maybe it wasn't dead content at the end of the day.
Yeah, and I think especially now that scaling updates are getting a little bit more love, it wouldn't surprise me if we start seeing them pop up in a few more places.
Yeah, and I mean, with the goal of moving things to 110, obviously archaeology is 120, but for the hunter one, that's where I think this gets really interesting, because you and I were actually talking in pre-show here about how hunter is one of the most neglected skills in the game, in both games, both RS3 and old school.
Yeah.
And this hunter is skilling offhand. We don't know much about it, but it will aid you in the hunting of whirligigs, box traps, and even big game hunting. And they say you'll also be able to earn dungeoneering tokens, dungeoneering wildcards, and Tetra Compass pieces from all of the dig sites across Daemonheim. So I guess that doesn't relate to the...
So that's another collection that might be interesting for Tetra Compass farming, because right now I think you would do Warforged for those. So that's interesting.
Yeah.
For sure.
Because the Warforged one is simple and it's good XP too. It's just four things you alter between, and you can do it between two excavation sites. So we'll have to see how that lands. But
no, I really like it. I think it's great.
I hope this makes Hunter viable, and
I don't think it will be a game changer.
No.
Like none of the scaling offhands are. But I think like it's nice. Like there's a little bit of interaction already between archaeology and hunter through the Mattox, of course, the dragon Mattox, which come from big game hunter.
I think that's a 1 in 100 drop rate there, isn't it?
Yeah, I got both of my Mattox Iron Man style from that, because I played archaeology Iron Man style. I'm not particularly looking forward to going back, but maybe if this makes it a little bit more viable, like you mentioned, I would not mind too much.
Yeah,
because I still need to go there and get all of the kills for comp. So
right, and the devil's in the details, really, with this, because what's the first thing you think of when it comes to box trapping? Chinchompas, right?
Yeah.
So the question is, how do you add a little cherry on top of that? First thing we of course think of with whirligigs is the prayer penance thing, which still great money. If anybody ever wants to make money, go go hunt the whirligigs there, or even do the golden roses. And big game hunting, it was being put in the terms when that first arrived as RuneScape skilling boss, but I kind of just found it annoying. So I'm interested to see what they lean into it on this. And I found it, I found it very curious that, we got more details for the archaeology one than we did for the hunter one. But I guess at this point, we're only 4 days away from that, less after you're listening for that and are listening to this, and we can just, dive straight into it then. So.
Yeah.
What about Spirit Weaver?
Ooh,
50% XP boost for summoning pouches, but pouches are crafted one at a time, 2.4 seconds each.
I think it's been one of the controversial ones. A lot of people are saying, I would never use this. I think relics don't have to be a best in slot, completely game changer thing, right? I think there will be a use case for this. Iron Man might want to do this if they have limited supplies, right? And all of a sudden, by spending more time, they can stretch out their resource pool for 50% longer. That's a pretty significant boost.
I mean, it's just that much less time you have to spend at the popsicle getting blue charms.
Yeah, I mean, that's maybe not the problem, right? But if you think about the Iron Man, they also have to get all of the secondaries.
The shards, too.
So, I can see why this might get some use. Will it completely change summoning? No, I don't think so. I could see myself doing this, honestly. Like, if I didn't worry so much about using my bonus XP as fast as possible, and I wanted a little bit more of a semi-AFK approach, I could see myself enabling this instead of having to run back and forth every 2 seconds.
Right, and that's the exact use case I was going to lean into for this, is that if you didn't mind, like if you found the continual running back and forth between Obelisk and Bank annoying, this might be a relic for you. Because you get the XP and
let's just be clear, right?
For
like, if you have a specific XP goal in mind, this takes a third of your costs. Given how expensive summoning is, that's nothing to dismiss.
I remember early summoning, getting Crimson Charms. They were a pain.
Oh, yeah.
So
I mean, these days, every Slayer monster and their grandma drops charms, it feels, but
I have to.
Yeah.
And, I think this is actually good now that we're here. It might be, different once we put the pudding in the mouth and see how it actually tastes. But I feel like this is actually good. And I think the people calling it dead content aren't looking at it from that perspective. So we'll have to wait and see where this lands next week.
Yeah, and look, like I say, there's a few relics out there, I think, like archaeology relics that are very, situational and niche already. Not all of them have to be, game changer.
Yeah. Like, I think for one of our monthly bits in the past, I suggested a relic power that would, in effect, penalize you for switching weapons. But if you stayed on your current weapon set, you would get a bonus to damage. It was basically a way to encourage people to just camp one style. And, we had something to that effect with charging 9 in the beta. I don't necessarily know what's going to become of that, but you ask anybody out there who at the time was doing, high-end magic or high-end ranged, if they would use such a relic power, their answer would be God, no. But on the other hand, somebody who was just doing casual combat and wanted a boost in terms of power for their combat abilities and didn't want to change, do a 4-tick auto rotation, that might be a fun thing to have. Obviously, that was a very early design, but it was just something that I threw together with that. But speaking of combat, we'll talk more about Daemonheim Archaeology next week. We do have a couple of teeny tiny patch notes from Osseous. Last week, Osseous now has her own entry in the bestiary. There's new teleport options on the Osseous teleportation device on Anachronia to teleport into the Osseous lair directly, or to the small island. Osseous will also no longer deal damage during the death animation, which was that was annoying, because if you had the little minions up, and the roar attack or munch attack happened, you could have got hit for thousands of damage and died during that if you weren't careful. And they also updated some text in the learn section to list the damage required to break free from the fear attack. So just some minor changes for Osseous. And I think the thing that I wanted to add on to this that I didn't get to add on to our coverage of Osseous last week, and this is probably something that Mount Ramen can address at some point, or maybe this is working as intended, but the Necromancy Osseous attacks are ranged green color rather than something like a purple. And I thought with all the recent discussion on telegraphing that they were talking about with Sanctum of Rebirth, I thought, okay, that's a little bit odd. Why aren't the Necromancy attacks purple or teal like the traditional Necromancy Paladin? I haven't been able to gain any further clarification on that, and I just wanted to raise that with our community to see if anybody else thought of that, and if that seems odd to anybody else, and if anybody else would like that change to purple. But maybe that might just be me being a little bit nitpicky on what colors the bolts Osseous was firing were. So we shall see if that gets changed. All right. What have we been doing in ours? Do you want to go first, or should I?
Go for it. Shane.
Okay. So I mentioned the combat stuff, and I mentioned last week on the podcast that I was going to take another cruise through the combat beta last weekend, and I did. And I think the thing that I want to hammer home with this is two things after the podcast last week, is that the styles as they are on the beta, with the abilities of Greater Concentrated Blast, Greater Sonic Wave, and Magma Tempest being unlocked from the various weapon styles, I think that feels good. And I think that they should ship that way. For folks who are unaware of what this means and what the ramifications are, right now, Greater Sonic Wave and Sonic Wave are limited to two-hand, as is Magma Tempest. Concentrated Blast and Greater Concentrated Blast are limited to dual wield. But the way the synergies work on this, and this might blow your mind, Cireon, Greater Sonic Wave gives you a general increase in ability damage and accuracy. But Greater Concentrated Blast gives you a boost to your crit chance. And then you pair this with the Tier 95 Staff of Armadyl and its special attack, which is built entirely around crit. You're left wondering, why can't I use the Fractured Staff of Armadyl as a main weapon with Greater Concentrated Blast? And that's why so many people just throw it into the Essence of Finality as a spec weapon.
Mm-hmm.
So, I just want to double down and say that, after further testing and, not just PVM, but general combat, I would really like that to stay as is. And I guess the other thing from this is that, when it comes to the charging stuff and going into what I was mentioning with the inability to change weapons for that one relic, I would really like a mechanic like that in game, but I might be a minority on that, since that disrupts the way magic works so much. But I think those are my two biggest things, and I just wanted to use this opportunity as a way of kind of highlighting that again as something that can be maybe beneficial to the wider community. But the beta's due to end in a day or so, so we'll see where all that lands. But aside from that combat beta stuff, I'll just say to, if you have the farming level to farm yaks, set up a yak farm to farm yak milk. It's really good money, even if you're already level 99 or 120 farming. I finally got that going, and I know that should have been going for a long time, but that's now part of the rotation with roars and potion flasks. So play your own farm, making money as it always has. But what have you been doing in RS3? Because you are you are back this week for this.
Yeah, I mean, back is a big word. I don't want to commit to anything.
Fair
But
enough.
yeah, I have basically not been playing RS3 for over half a year now. I think a lot of people burnt out on the game after the Hero Pass debacle. I burnt out for a different reason than most people, I think.
Yeah.
But to me, the direction of the game was just lacking. And then they came with this dig site, archaeology dig site. I'm like, damn, that's my kryptonite. as you all well know. So that was something I was definitely going to come back for. I wanted to try out the Pride event, and now I'm kind of like, I want my Max K back because it has my Pride colors, and I think that's a good goal for this month. It doesn't sound too hard. Rituals are pretty fast in the last few levels to 99, from what I can tell. So I'm doing that. So I got myself a nice little ability bar from a cool thing that is on the same YouTube channel as this podcast called Micro Lessons. I will gladly admit that I shamelessly stole that rotation.
No, that's fine. That's what it's for.
And I parked myself at level 30 Wilderness in the middle of some abyssal demons for a few hours on mobile, and got 90 Necromancy, and now it's Rituals all the way to 99.
Yeah.
But yeah, no, I mean, yeah.
I was just going to say, it's very hard to make a bad Necromancy bar, but as long as you have the fundamentals there of the builders for, the resources and then a spender or two, you're golden.
Yeah, sure. And for me, like, the biggest thing I needed to figure out was how am I going to maintain, like, my health and all of that. But between the attuned ectoplasmator and a demon horn necklace and soul split, it turned out to be not just trivial, but like overly easy. So I think that was pretty good. So no, I think that's nice. I don't see myself getting set up for the grinds that are necessary for comp. I think that's another thing that I kind of dislike.
Take it slow. Don't
RS3.
Yeah,
exactly.
I wouldn't.
So I'll take things one thing at a time. I am cautiously optimistic about some of the mining and smithing changes they announced. So, I think I can see myself bopping, in and out. I definitely don't want to burn myself out again. I want to keep playing old school because I'm still having fun with that. I want to play my second account in old school because I'm having fun with that.
Oh yeah,
so
the listeners don't know about that. Tell them what that is.
Yeah, so I mean, ages ago, when they reworked Imcatcher, I created a second account, play it, and I was like, might as well make it an Iron Man. That was on RS3. So since I'm now getting in the stage of old school, like towards the end of mid game into early late game, the grinds are kicking in. I mean, you've noticed this as well, I think, when you were playing.
Well, yeah, and, we started the old school show with what have we been doing first off because we could tell stories about that. But at this point, it's just becoming grinds that are, week long, so start with the content first.
Yeah, exactly. But, like, a lot of the grinds are also AFK. Like, there's a good AFK combat training. So I decided to just, dust off that account, start doing all of the free to play quests, and I was like, might as well hardcore Iron. I want to do Iron Man because what I really enjoyed about Leagues, which is like the temporary game mode where everybody has to be an Iron Man, is it creates a whole new set of puzzles. And like in hindsight, it's what I really enjoyed about archaeology, right? Like figuring out what's the most efficient way to get all of the materials and all of the, collections in a way that works for me. And Iron Man is that on a much higher level across all of the different skills. It's currently a hardcore Iron Man as well, which makes some quests particularly stressful. So we'll see how long that
Well,
lasts.
just be glad that if hardcores died in this day and age, they don't, get deleted, right?
Exactly. But I did get membership on that account, so I've been doing some questing on that, which is like, it's a nice change of pace as well, right? Like going back and doing some of the easier quests. So I could see myself, doing some mining in RS3 while doing some quests in old school. So I like having those options as well. And that's really it. Maybe
How are
now
you?
that
Sorry, I'll let you finish.
Necromancy makes some of the PVM stuff much easier, I might start going through some of the comp tasks. But
I was gonna ask, with that, how are you finding, the rituals after all these months? Because the point you're at right now is the point where people just really kicked in for those 200 mil grinds in the first couple weeks after the skill launched. How do you find the rituals now with the disturbances and all that?
I think the accessibility and readability of this suffers. I think it's not clear what you're meant to do with these disturbances.
Try high contrast mode.
Yeah, I might try that. It's a little bit band-aidy if that ends up being because I'm not even disabled, right? So why do I need to use? I mean, okay, accessibility settings are there for everyone, right? That's that's the cool thing about accessibility set. Subtitle. I use subtitles on each and all television I look at.
Oh yeah, I do too most of the time.
Right? But that's if you think about it, it's an accessibility feature.
Yeah, because you watch a modern TV show. I mean, half the time the voice is muffled, or there's an explosion going off.
Okay, yes. So actually, the sound editing of modern TV and movies is shit, and that's why everybody needs subtitles these days. But look, going back, right? Even so, it's an accessibility feature, but everybody benefits, and I think that generalizes to all accessibility features. That being said, high contrast mode, I feel you shouldn't have to need it.
Yeah.
So that's my concern. It's not as AFK as combat where I could just park myself on mobile. I don't see myself doing this on mobile, which is a little bit unfortunate, but I don't know. It's not bad, but I think it lacks the elegance. I think, I said this when Necromancy came out, and I haven't changed my opinion on this, is that I feel it's a skill that tries to merge a bunch of mechanics that they have seen working well elsewhere without really setting up a solid foundation. The entire skill sort of lacks elegance in a sense. Right? And these disturbances and rituals, it all feels a little bit none of it quite comes together as nicely. That's the thing with archaeology. Everything was integrated.
Right.
The entire loop just felt right. And here it all feels a little bit disjointed, and it needed a little bit longer in the oven, or maybe a clearer vision from the ground up, because it almost feels like they had 2 or 3 teams working on this, and then at some point they came together and tried to merge it. That's how it feels.
Yeah, and I feel like rituals were definitely separate from the combat side of it, and I think rituals and combat are 2 different beasts in this. And we saw with the Ungale ritual site that they wanted to add in the more lean back training method associated with that, and I feel like as more.
I mean, I asked that from the start, right?
Yeah,
multiple ritual sites felt like such a great, because that's. A big
that would be leading into the skills. You had multiple dig sites with archaeology.
Yeah, exactly. Archaeology felt more grounded in the rest of the world, whereas necromancy, I mean, yes, it's a combat style that you can use everywhere, but other than that, the skill feels very isolated to the rest of the game.
Right.
And that's because the entire place of is not even on the normal world map. Right? I remember this super silly piece of criticism is that the home teleport icon for just feels randomly placed on the map.
Right. Okay.
And that to me is almost a symbol for where the entire skill sits in the game.
Interesting.
It's not part of the combat triangle.
I think
it sits
I can.
outside of it. The area, it sits outside. Like the entire skill sort of feels disconnected from the rest.
Well, how
of
are
the
you
game.
supposed to represent the underworld on a map?
I mean, yeah, but why does it have to be the underworld, right? Why not? Okay, why not similar to what they proposed with the spirit world for shamanism in old school, where there are places in the world where the veil between the normal world and the underworld is thin, and now you can place it on the overworld.
Ooh,
it doesn't even take that much effort to come up with lore.
That would be neat.
Yeah, there you go.
Somebody should make a necromancy quest that leans into that.
Yeah, exactly. And that's the thing, right? Like, it feels like, I'm not saying the entire skill is bad, but I feel it needed so little bit extra, like just that little bit
just
extra.
a little bit of a nudge to make it feel like it. I get it.
Yeah,
I get it. Like that one, like the extra 3 months that they took on archaeology, right? Because it was supposed to come out at the end of 2019 or in January 2019, but they kicked it out to the end of March. So something like that is what you're saying, basically, right?
Yeah.
And I mean, in hindsight, with how the players tore through it and the reaction from some of the high-level PVM community on that, I mean, sure, absolutely, do something like that to make it work better. I'm not going to force you to do this. But I'm keen to sit down with you one day and sell you on Necromancy Combat. We need to get you tier 90s first, but after that, and the Zuck Cape, and after that,
I still think that, I think was it the Game Jam project where somebody made like a really clear UI widget that showed very clearly the number of souls you had active.
Oh, that wasn't a Game Jam project. That was
the necrosis stacks and all of that.
That was an Alt 1. That was an Alt 1 add-on. Oh. Well. But hey,
yeah,
I mean, if if RS3 gets plugins, that's the first one being made.
Yeah, no, that's a whole different discussion. After I've used RuneLight, I'm never trash talking people who use Alt 1 for clues anymore. I'm over it. But yeah, no, like that's the kind of thing, and I feel the game should support that from the get-go. And that, yeah,
I did rate plugins high on the list in my survey.
Mm-hmm.
Did you?
Yes.
Yeah. Which I don't think I would have done that a year ago.
No, you might be right that I would not either. I think. The important one of setting up a plugin ecosystem is that it avoids wild growth. Because that's the thing, right? Like, you could make RuneLight plugins that do crazy stuff, but because there's a really solid working relationship between Jagex and the people that maintain RuneLight, so the community that does, if there's a plugin, like I saw that at some point somebody made a plugin that automatically switched your prayers at Jad.
That's a bit too far.
You cannot find that. You cannot find that on a plugin hub, right? Because that's too far. And that's the nice thing. If you start supporting a plugin ecosystem and make sure that there's moderation, you avoid people going to more sketchy places and getting access to the more sketchy stuff.
Yeah, and I think that's probably the biggest thing with Mod Marcos coming over from old school is that we get not only, the comms and community aspect of it, but there's that oversight now on the RS3 side of what worked with OS and what can, maybe be done on RS3 to move the game in that kind of general direction. Because I'll say that during the content drought that we had, I said, give me the old school type and cadence of updates, but in the RS3 game with the RS3 graphics. I don't know if the cadence is possible given the amount of extra work that needs to go into making RS3 updates on that, but I feel like the roadmap is a good starting point on that.
Yeah, I mean, I said earlier I'm cautiously optimistic, right? Because skilling updates sound good, and so far I like what I'm hearing, and the reason for going to, I mean, 110 just sounds wrong, and I'm very worried that we end up in a situation where like maybe a handful of skills get bumped to 110 and then they decide that's not the way to go.
Right.
And now we have 99, 110, 120 and elite skills that have a different XP curve. And like as a new player,
That's
going to be
yeah,
complete
right.
madness. That being said, let's be honest, how many new players are coming to RS3 these days? Like that's not what we're making updates for anymore. And you know, we'll see. But I'm cautiously optimistic because the arguments behind 110 make total sense. It sounds like they thought it through. But I'm not ready to say I'm back, right? I'm not ready to say we're so back.
Yeah, that was the title that week. But in any case, the other thing with 110s on that is, you know, what happens if the direction and the leadership changes again in 18 months, right?
Exactly.
So, yeah.
Exactly. That's always the risk, and that's why I'm taking more of a cautious, distanced approach. You know, for a long time, I mean, we talked about this a lot, right? Where I could not see myself quitting RuneScape 3, right? It's just, I don't know. Is it sunk cost fallacy? Is it the community that you want to keep it? I don't know, right? But having switched to old school and, you know, I haven't missed RuneScape 3, so I'm able to take more of a distance from it right now.
Right. Whereas I didn't take that.
I'm almost less emotionally attached. If the game now completely, you know, blows, it would suck, right? I would still not like it, but I'm no longer at the point that that will be the end of the world. You know, that's maybe just a way of things.
Yeah, and you know, I also think it's time that we start thinking of RS3 and old school as being just RuneScape and different interpretations and different ways to play either of them.
Mm-hmm.
Because, you know, you and I both know that there's tons of overlap between the community, and when you get both communities in a room together, we are one, right? So
yeah, and I think and look, I've never said any different, I believe. But I've lived it now. I think both games have their own basically reasons to exist.
Yeah, I would agree with that. And there's things I like about both.
Exactly. I like about old school that it feels a little bit more zen, right? For me, that is really a little bit more, I just want to sit down, do a chill thing. Like I worked all day. I just want to chill, right? Netflix and skill, in a sense. And I feel that RuneScape 3 has become a little bit too shouty for that. It wants me to do things every day, right? Like it does all of these dailies, it does all of these things, and I don't want it to be a chore. But old school is really good at that. But then again, RuneScape 3 just looks gorgeous, and it actively, it probably awards actively sitting down and playing, you know, hours and hours at end a little bit more.
Yeah, and you know, you can feel that too. And I know you probably you can't sympathize with this or emphasize. I don't know. English is so difficult. But that's exactly how I feel rewarded with Necromancy when I lean into the combat of it.
Yeah.
So, but we do have some achievements this week. Starting off, we have Meriwether with 120 farming on June 5th. Dane Kare got 99 smithing on June 4th. Atria's got 99 magic on the 1st. And Robbie got 200 million strength XP on the 1st.
Right. We have Ormen getting 99 Herblore on May 31. Oh, right. We're only just into June. I kind of forgot. We also got a few achievements on May 30th. We have Bulbasaur getting 120 Archaeology and Diapolo 10 also getting 120 Archaeology, getting ready for that dig site. And then, oh my goodness, Skomos Depeche getting 99 fire making, the goat skill. We all know that. I can't wait for 110 fire making.
There was a footnote. There was a footnote in the discussions for the wood cutting and fletching stuff in Mod Jack's notes on that section, and they were like fire making. Yes.
What to do with fire making?
Yeah, it was basically fire making. ...
Yeah, I am sure they will come up with something. It's probably one of the later ones we see because it's a hard one.
Yeah, because I mean,
if they can figure something out there, I think it would be fantastic.
Yeah, I mean, right now you got incense sticks.
I think it should become a utility skill.
Yeah,
that integrates with a lot of, like, you could integrate it with prayer, have like a new prayer training method, like lean into the pyre logs. You could, lean more into its utility for smithing. I think that's what it should become. I mean, what I'm the most interested in, like an even harder skill, I think, to take to 110. It's agility.
It needs it.
I mean, the problem is everybody has like massive agility levels because of the bloody Silverhawk boots.
Yeah,
that completely wrecked that skill.
Yeah.
So what's the deal with that?
I have no idea. Like we talked about before, you could have tie-ins to ranged, right? But do you really want to do that? I don't know. Or is it just destined to be the shortcut and utility skill, which you really, don't need because there teleports to most places you want to get to.
Yeah, and I think I almost, this is going to sound like a weird combination, but I almost think they should group agility and fire making together and somehow make that work as,
the rejects.
Not the rejects, but like agility should maybe become the utility for mobility and combat, whereas fire making should become the utility for skilling.
Right, because you could work agility into not only range, but also the melee side of it too. I don't know how you'd work it into magic and necromancy. I don't think you need to work it into necromancy.
No, you don't.
And magic already has enough utility in it, so maybe it's just those two.
Remember that the combat skills also all need to be brought to 110, so...
Well, I don't know if you watched the full, or looked into our notes from last week, but with the mining and smithing stuff, there was an initial idea to take strength and attack to 110, but it was decided not to do that and to leave that to the combat team when they decide the appropriate time to do so.
Yeah.
So
we might see the old combat skills restored to former glory.
Oh, that would be fun. Though melee's actually pretty good, but that's a different rabbit hole. In itself. And for folks who are joining us on this episode and just wondering what the hell's going on, this is how we do the old school shows. This is the format of the old school show. Oh, that's what we're...
Oh yeah, we just ramble and talk. No, that's underselling it.
There's a method to the madness.
There is a method to the madness. Yeah, that's a good way of putting it.
All right, speaking of madness, you know where you get tons of madness in this day and age?
Here on the podcast?
Yes, but also on YouTube.
Oh boy. Oh dear. Yes.
So that's where we come in with the pick of the week this week. If anybody's wanted a saner version of YouTube that is not ad supported, that has, I want to say, a breadth of educationally leaning content, smarter content, and not as much clickbait, you can head over to a certain website called nebula.tv. It's a yearly based subscription.
If you watch the channel, the educational channels, you must have heard an ad for this.
Yeah, that's true. That's true. But now you're hearing it on this podcast. And I think the thing that sold me on this was that it's a yearly subscription. You pay once, and it's cheaper than almost a month of Netflix.
Yeah, it's really not that expensive. I think it's a very fair price for the amount of content you get. And I like how transparent it is, right? Like it is really set up by creators for creators. And they own the place.
Yeah. Go ahead.
And like when I first started, I got it for like the content, but like a lot the app was bad and like I I don't know, right? Like the user experience wasn't great, but they've really invested in that and you know, I there have been days where I've literally thought of just deleting all of my YouTube apps and logging out and just using that
Oh
because
yeah.
I could probably fill all of my needs with just that, but
Yeah, this is where that show we've talked about in the past, Jet Lagged, is original too. It's also got the channels. Two of the other ones that I watch whenever they put new videos out are the Wendover and Half as Interesting, which people might have seen on YouTube. Wendover's most recent video on East Germany is really interesting, and there was also one a while back on Utah as well, which I think was #1 for a while on YouTube after it released. And we're talking about Nebula being the original place to get all these, but most of the stuff on Nebula is published later on YouTube for free, and that's how you get into it.
Yeah, there's also a lot of cool sort of originals. I think The Battle for Britain is one.
Yeah, that's good.
I think it's done by View Engineering, which the cool thing is they're able to take a little bit more liberty in discussing things like war, because the YouTube algorithm will suppress any talk.
Suppress and demonetize.
Suppress and demonetize.
Even if it's done in an educational way.
Exactly. So it just creates that little bit more freedom. All of my favorite urbanist channels are there. One day
you have sent me so many videos.
Yeah, I know. One day I will convince Shane that Canada and the US are actually shitholes to live. So, yeah, you heard it here first. No, they're not all bad, but yeah, no, it's. I love it. I think it's great. I like the idea that I'm actually paying directly because I'm paying for YouTube as well still.
That's what you use for your music platform, right?
Yeah, though I have been doubting that, but like I've had to use YouTube before on like my work browser, and I got so fed up with the amount of ads. Which is down your throat. Like it's YouTube is unusable without a premium subscription on AdBlock.
Right, and I think it speaks to a larger Google problem because those YouTube videos now, unless you request web first, are funneled to you in search first. And when I'm looking for something programming related or something about a game, I don't want to watch a 10 to 15 minute video on that.
Mm-hmm.
So, but
and maybe you could just ask Gemini for an answer.
Let's not do that after the recent Gemini fun business. But Nebula.tv is the
Don't you ever put glue on your pizza to keep the toppings on?
Yeah. I also happen to know that Andrew Jackson recently graduated from an American university in the 1990s.
Mm-hmm.
But you'll find things that are a bit more grounded on Nebula. What's your favorite channel there right now, or show?
Oh, that's a really tough question. I mean, Wendover is sort of the original one.
Yeah.
That's the main reason I went there. I think they make really good videos, and all of the spin-off stuff they've done. Like if you're a Half-First Interesting fan, you know that they have like a little joke where if they make a video about a topic that the FBI would not be happy about you knowing, they start the video by making it be about bricks. Because they will stop watching. On Nebula, there's actually an original that's like 45 minutes long about bricks. Wink, wink. So
I gotta check that out. I haven't seen that.
Yeah, so I think that for me, that level of humor, that style of writing really works. And then there is Not Just Bikes, which is like my favorite urbanist channel. It's a Canadian person who moved to the Netherlands after having lived in various places across the world, and has pretty good insights, I think, on urbanism as well. So I mean, and jet lag.
Yeah,
course.
which is currently going through the Australian season. If anybody wants to pick that up after we last talked about it on the show last year, so that's what I'll go with for mine. But Nebula.tv, and they have apps too for all the big platform or all the big TV
I have it on my on my Google of Android TV. I think it's called on my Chromecast. Works really well.
Nice. Alrighty, well, that pretty much brings us to the end of this episode. We'll be back next week to, of course, discuss the Daemonheim Archaeology dig site and seeing what kind of fun business there we can uncover. But it's been great hearing again from you, Cireon, on RSBANDB Update, the RS3 show.
Yeah, you might start hearing me a bit more often again.
Yeah. What are we discussing this week on the old school show? Tell the listeners. It's a bit of a tease if they want to continue on. After they hear this. Okay.
Pride.
So you'll hear a bit about that again.
We're also discussing
Flames of Zamorak.
Flames of Zamorak. Yeah, that's an old one that I think a lot of people here haven't heard about. I think last week we talked about WoW Gothic Sleeps rewards.
We talked about WoW Gothic Sleeps rewards last week, and we caught up with a friend of RSBANDB Update from way, way, way back in the day, Raji, who used to help us out with the bot busting. We talked with him, caught up with him, and got his perspective on the Project Rebalance combat changes. So if you want to hear about any of those things, or you want to hear about the community going both ways on Flames of Zamorak, that's already going to be a fun discussion, I can tell. You can head on over to our YouTube channel for that, youtube.com/@OSRSUpdate or update.show/OS. But if you want the RS3 show, subscribe to get that one each and every week, update.show/subscribe. We're on all the podcast listeners out there, Apple, Spotify, Pocket Cast, YouTube as well, youtube.com/RSBANDB. Likes and subscribe always help the channel out, and you guys just leave the kindest of comments. So thanks so much, everybody, for that. And with that, we'll see you guys next week for another episode of RSBANDB Update. See you then, everyone. Take care.
Bye.